The detective read the phone transcript twice. Then she set it down on my kitchen table, next to Carol's crossword book. And she looked at me for a long moment. "Mr. Grange," she said, "how long have you known?" I didn't answer right away. Outside, my son's SUV was pulling into the driveway, and he didn't know yet. Neither did his wife. Here, let me back up. 11 days earlier. My name is Walter Grange. I'm 63 years old, and I live in Chattanooga, Tennessee, in the same brick house on Delmar Avenue I've owned for 38 years. I spent 41 years inspecting railroad bridges, and these days I fix porch steps for half the widows on my street, and never charge a dime. Welcome to the channel. Get comfortable, because this one is going to take you somewhere. Drop a comment, and let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button, and make sure you're subscribed. Trust me, you're going to love it here. Now, let me tell you about my wife. Carol and I have been married 34 years. She taught 4th grade for 3 decades. She makes a pot roast that ended 2 neighborhood feuds I know of. And on the 9th of March, at 6:15 in the morning, she had a stroke at our kitchen sink while I was pouring coffee 4 feet away. She survived. Thank God she survived. But it took her speech down to a slow, careful walk, and it took most of the strength out of her right hand. The woman who graded 10,000 spelling tests now needed help buttoning a sweater. I want you to understand something about me. I am not a violent man. Never have been. 41 years on the railroad taught me that the loudest man on the crew is usually the one who missed the crack in the beam. I don't yell. I look. I write things down. That habit is the only reason I'm here telling you this story. Our son Mason is 31. Mortgage broker. Nice suits, whiter teeth than I ever gave him. His wife Brooke is 29. And if you found her on the internet, you'd think she was a saint. Hospital selfies with Carol. Little captions about caregiving and family and gratitude. 40,000 people follow her life. I guess 39,000 of them believe it. After the stroke, Brooke appointed herself Carol's care coordinator. Nobody asked her to. She just showed up with a binder and a smile and said, "Dad, you focus on the house. I'll handle the paperwork side." And I'll be honest with you. I was grateful. I was tired. I was scared. And here was family stepping up. Some people show up when it counts. Make a note of who they are. But make a second note, in different ink, of the ones who show up a little too fast. The first anomaly was small. It was a Tuesday, April the 22nd, and Carol had speech therapy at 2 Tovley. Brooke was supposed to drive her because my truck was at Dale's garage getting a fuel pump. At 2 Tovley 40, the therapy office called my cell. Carol never arrived. I called Brooke. She answered on the 5th ring, and I could hear music behind her. "Oh, that was today," she said. "Walt, she's fine, she's napping. Honestly, those sessions are a waste anyway. She's not really improving. She's not really improving." Carol had said her own name clean and clear that Sunday for the first time in 6 weeks, and cried doing it. I filed that sentence away. That's escalation 1, though I didn't call it that yet. Escalation 2 came 8 days later. Our banker of 22 years, a fellow named Clinton Reese down at First Tennessee on Broad Street, called me about a change of address form on Carol's inheritance account. The $84,000 her mother left her. Statements had been rerouted to a post office box I'd never heard of. "Probably Brooke organizing things," Mason said when I asked. "She's got a system, Dad. Let her work. Let her work." I did something better. I started keeping a notebook. The same kind of green field notebook I carried under bridges for 4 decades. Date, time, What was said? Who said it? When you inspect steel for a living, you learn that failure never announces itself. It leaves small marks first. You survive by taking the small marks seriously. Stay with me, because here is where it stops being small. June the 11th. A Wednesday. I was supposed to spend the whole day helping reshingle the roof at Grace Baptist with the men's group. But at 11:20, the sky went charcoal, and the rain came sideways, and Pastor Ridley sent us all home. I pulled onto Delmar Avenue at 11:52. Brooke's white Lexus was in my driveway. That was normal. She watched Carol on Wednesdays. What wasn't normal was that I came in through the mudroom door, the quiet door, because my boots were soaked, and Carol hates mud on her front carpet even now. Especially now. Brooke was in my kitchen with her back to me, phone to her ear, and Carol's bedroom door was shut down the hall. Brooke's voice was a voice I had never heard come out of her. Flat. Bored. All the sugar gone. No, the timeline's fine, she said. The doctor's letter is the last piece, and after that it doesn't matter what the old man thinks. He signs whatever's in front of him. I stood in my own mudroom, dripping on the mat, and I did not move. Relax, Brooke said, and she laughed a small, dry laugh. She can't even follow a conversation anymore. As long as she's breathing, we're fine. That's all she has to do. She's not a person right now. She's the asset with a heartbeat. The asset with a heartbeat. That was my wife. That was the woman down the hall who taught fourth graders to read for 30 years, who was fighting to get her own name back one syllable at a time. I want you to sit with that for a second, because I had to. I did not walk in there. I did not raise my voice. I did not throw her phone against the wall, though my hands wanted to. I stepped backward, out the mudroom door, into the rain. I sat in my truck at the end of my own street for 11 minutes. I know it was 11, because I watched the clock, because counting is how I stay level. 3 questions sat in my chest like rail spikes. What doctor's letter? What was I supposed to sign? And how long had this been going on? I didn't have answers yet. But I had one thing Brooke didn't know about, and it was worth more than her whole 40,000 followers. I called Earl Hodge. Earl worked signals on the railroad with me for 26 years, retired now, and he answered on the second ring the way he has answered every call from me since 1983. Earl, I said, I need you to come sit with Carol tomorrow morning, and I need you to not ask me why yet. There was a pause about as long as a heartbeat. What time, he said. That's it. That's the whole conversation. Some men you have to convince. Some men just ask what time. The next morning, while Earl drank coffee at my kitchen table and did the crossword out loud with Carol, slow and patient, letting her find the words, I drove downtown to a records office with my green notebook in my jacket pocket, and what I found there, on the 3rd page the clerk printed for me, made the phone call in my kitchen sound like a kindness. The clerk's name was Ramona, and she had worked in the Hamilton County Records Office for 19 years. What she printed for me was a title search on my own house. Somebody had ordered a professional appraisal on 44117 Delmar Avenue in February. 4 months ago. A month before Carol's stroke. Read that again. Before the stroke. The appraisal was commissioned through a company called Bluff City Property Advisors, and the contact name on the request was M. Grange. My son had priced his mother's house while she was still healthy, still doing her Sunday crosswords in ink, still teaching her Wednesday Bible study. I stood at that counter, and I felt the floor of my life shift about an inch, because here's what 41 years of inspection work teaches you. When you find one crack, you don't patch it and go home. You assume the crack goes deeper than you can see, and you keep looking until you find the bottom of it. I did not call Mason. I did not confront Brooke. I did not tell Carol, not yet, because her blood pressure was a doctor's daily worry. And I would not hand her this until I could also hand her the fix. Instead, I went to see Dorothy Van. Dorothy is a trust and estate attorney on Macaulay Avenue, 30 years in practice, and she'd done our wills back in 2009. She's a small woman with reading glasses on a chain, and she listens the way a good doctor listens. No interrupting, no flinching. I laid it all out. The missed therapy, the rerouted bank statements, the phone call, the appraisal. My green notebook, open on her desk, every entry dated and timed. Dorothy read for 4 minutes without saying a word. I counted. Then she took off her glasses. "Walter," she said. The phrase "doctor's letter," combined with "he signs whatever's in front of him," I need you to hear what that pattern usually means. Someone is building a guardianship petition. They get a physician to document that Carol is incompetent. Then they get you to sign paperwork you think is routine. Medical authorizations, maybe a power of attorney. Once a court appoints them guardian, they control her money, her care, and eventually her property. It is the single most common way families rob their own elderly. If you've been listening for a while, do us one quick favor. Subscribe. It costs you nothing, and it means everything to us. Hit the like button while you're at it, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Here's a truth I learned under bridges, and it applies at kitchen tables too. Rust never sleeps, and it never starts where you can see it. It starts underneath, at the joints, in the dark. And by the time it shows on the surface, it's been eating for years. Dorothy gave me 2 names before I left her office. The first was a forensic accountant named Priya Rao. 14 years untangling money for the U.S. Attorney's Office before she went private. The second was a detective named Sandra Okafor with the county's Adult Protective Services Unit. But Dorothy told me to hold that card until we knew the full shape of the thing. Priya took my banking records, Carol's statements, and the P.O. box number Clinton had flagged, and she asked me for 1 week. She called me in 4 days. "Mr. Grange, can you come in?" "Don't bring anyone." Her office was a small room over a title company on Market Street, and she had my family's financial life laid out across a corkboard like a train schedule. She started at the left side, at the oldest pin. 26 months ago, Priya said, your wife's inheritance account started leaking. Small automatic transfers, $180 here, $220 there, labeled as household care contribution, moving to an account at a credit union in Nashville. Total so far, $31,400, 26 months. That was a full 2 years before the stroke. This wasn't a scheme somebody dreamed up at Carol's hospital bed. Her hospital bed was the finish line they'd been waiting for. Stay with me, because it gets worse, and worse in a way I didn't see coming. The Nashville account belongs to an LLC, Priya said. Meridian Family Care Solutions. Registered agent is Brooke Grange. And Mr. Grange, the LLC was formed 3 weeks after your wife's mother died and left her that inheritance. They had built the drain the same month the water arrived. There's more, Priya said, and she moved to the right side of the board. The P.O. box isn't just receiving Carol's bank statements, it's receiving correspondence from a Dr. Leland Fisk, a physician in Cleveland, Tennessee, not one of Carol's treating doctors, and it's receiving mail from a senior placement service, the kind that brokers beds in long-term care facilities. I sat very still in that little office. Down on Market Street, a delivery truck was backing up, beeping. Ordinary life going on. They mean to put her in a home, I said. They mean to put her in the cheapest home Medicaid will cover, Priya said quietly. Because there's a placement inquiry in that file dated May 30th, and the facility they inquired about runs about $2,900 a month. Mr. Grange, your wife's accounts and your house together are worth north of $600,000. The math of this scheme only works if her care costs almost nothing, the asset with a heartbeat. Now I understood the sentence all the way down. Carol wasn't a person they were robbing. She was inventory they were liquidating. And the plan had a warehouse picked out for her. Here's where it gets interesting. Because I still had one question with no answer, and it was the one that hurt most. Why? Mason grew up in that house. Carol drove him to Little League in a station wagon for 9 years. She graded papers at the same table where he did his homework. You don't price your mother's house while she's healthy unless something is pushing you. Priya found the pushing. Your son's brokerage? She said, pulling a printout. Grange Home Lending. It looks successful. It is not. He personally guaranteed office leases in 2023, expanded into 2 markets right before rates went up, and he's carrying about $315,000 in debt, coming due in stages starting this October. His business account has lived below $9,000 for 6 months. The Lexus, the lake trips on Brooks' page. The kitchen renovation. Near as I can tell, it's all borrowed air. The curated life was a mask over a drowning man. And rather than come to his father, rather than sit at my table and say, Dad, I'm in trouble, my son and his wife had decided it would be simpler to harvest his mother. I drove home the long way that evening, out past the rail yard where I'd started, as a 22-year-old with a flashlight and a clipboard. I'm going to tell you something true. The anger I felt wasn't hot. Hot anger is for strangers. What family betrayal gives you is cold, and cold lasts longer. Earl was on my porch when I got home, sitting with Carol, the 2 of them watching the fireflies come up out of the grass. Carol smiled at me and said my name, clear, whole, hers. And that night, at 9:47, my phone buzzed with a text from Brooke. Hi, Dad. Scheduled a little family meeting with a doctor for Carol next Thursday. Just routine paperwork stuff. We'll need your signature on a few things. Nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry about. The letter Dorothy warned me about was moving. They had set Thursday as the day they'd take my wife apart on paper. They gave me 6 days. 6 days. Most men would have spent them shouting. I spent the first one in a parking lot in Cleveland, Tennessee, watching a medical office from my truck. Dr. Leland Fisk operated out of a strip plaza on Keith Street, between a vape shop and a tax preparer. No hospital affiliation on the sign. I didn't go in. I just wanted to see the place with my own eyes, because I've learned you should always look at the thing itself, not the paperwork about the thing. While I sat there, Priya called with the last piece. And I need you to understand something about me before I tell you what it was. In 41 years of inspections, I condemned exactly 3 bridges. 3. Each time, men above me got angry, because condemning a bridge costs money. Each time I was right. I know what it feels like to find the crack that goes all the way through. This was the 4th time. Dorothy's paralegal pulled a favor at the courthouse, Priya said. There's a guardianship petition already drafted, filed nowhere yet. It's sitting with a filing service queued up. It names Brooke as sole guardian of Carol's person and estate. Not Mason. Brooke alone. Why not both of them? I asked. Because of the second document in the queue, Priya said, and her voice went careful. There's a supporting affidavit template. It describes the household. Walter, it describes you. Quote, the petitioner has observed the respondent's spouse exhibiting confusion, memory lapses, and emotional volatility, and believes he is unable to serve the respondent's interests. They built a file on you too. If you fought the guardianship, they were going to suggest you needed one yourself. I sat in that parking lot, and I looked at my own hands on the steering wheel. 63 years old, steady as they were at 30, they weren't just taking Carol. The plan had a chapter for me. 2 old people. 2 signatures. 2 problems filed away in a courthouse. And Brooke holding every key. Mason hadn't just betrayed his mother. He'd signed off on a story where his father was a confused old man. I still don't know to this day whether that part was Brooke's idea or his. I've decided I don't want to, and here is the moment I want you to remember from this whole story. I didn't hit the steering wheel. I didn't call Mason screaming. I sat there, and I watched a woman carry dry cleaning into the shop next to Dr. Fisk's office. And something in my chest went level and smooth, like water finding flat ground. I wasn't angry anymore. I was decided. There is a particular kind of quiet that falls over a man when he stops being afraid and starts being dangerous. It doesn't feel like rage. It feels like a checklist, because here's what Brooke, in 2 years of planning, never once bothered to research. She studied Carol's accounts. She studied the house's value. She never studied me. To her, I was the old man in the $60 boots who signs whatever's in front of him. She had no idea what my signature was already attached to. I'm not going to tell you the plan yet. I'll tell you what I did hour by hour. And you can watch it the way my family eventually did. From the outside. Too late. Day 2, 8 a.m., Dorothy Van's office. Carol came with me. Earl drove us in his Buick so Brooke wouldn't clock my truck downtown. Because here's the thing Brooke's whole scheme rested on, the lie that Carol was gone. Carol was not gone. Her speech was slow. Her mind was a locked filing cabinet with a stiff drawer, not an empty one. Dorothy brought in a neuropsychologist named Dr. Time, Ellen Marsh, 22 years of practice, who spent 3 hours with Carol that morning and wrote 11 pages certifying her competent to make her own legal decisions. Every minute of the evaluation on video. Time-stamped, witnessed. Then, on that same video, my wife did the bravest paperwork of her life. Slow. Left-handed. Every word her own. She revoked every authorization Brooke had collected since March. She executed a new durable power of attorney naming me, with Earl Hodge as successor, and she moved everything she owned into a living trust with locks on it that a guardianship petition cannot touch, because you cannot be appointed guardian over assets a competent person already placed beyond your reach. When she finished signing, Carol looked up at Dorothy and said, "1 word at a time. Did I spell everything? Right? 30 years a teacher. Even now." I had to step out into the hallway for a minute, and I'm not ashamed to tell you that Day 3 was for the money. Clinton Reese at First Tennessee flagged both of Carol's accounts, killed the automatic transfers, and reversed what the bank could claw back. $4,600 of the recent skim, returned by Friday. The rest, all $31,400 of it, went into Priya's report. Every transfer, every date, every routing number pointing at Meridian Family Care Solutions, LLC, registered agent Brooke Grange. That report went into a folder. The folder went to Detective Sandra Okafor, Adult Protective Services. 11 years working financial exploitation of the elderly. We sat in her office for 90 minutes on Day 4. She read my green notebook cover to cover. And when she got to the phone call, the asset with a heartbeat, she stopped. And she read it twice. And she set the notebook down. "Mr. Grange," she said, "in this unit we mostly get called after the money's gone and the victim's in a facility. You caught it moving. That almost never happens. I spent my life catching things before they fall," I said. This one's just personal. Day 5. I made one phone call to a man named Wesley Turk, a commercial loan attorney, about a private note from March of 2019. And then I did the last thing. The thing that mattered most. The thing that made Earl grin like a man watching a chessboard. I texted Brooke back. Thursday works fine. Whatever helps Carol. I'll bring my reading glasses so I can sign everything. Dad, she replied in 9 minutes with 3 little hearts. Some people show up. Make a note of who they are. Write it somewhere permanent. And the ones who send you hearts while sharpening the knife? Write them down too. Same notebook. Different page. Thursday came gray and warm. At 9 a.m., Brooks' Lexus and Mason's Tahoe pulled into my driveway, and behind them, a gunmetal Audi I didn't know. Dr. Leland Fisk himself, house call, folder under his arm, ready to meet a confused old couple. Brooke came up my porch steps in a yellow dress, camera ready, and hugged me like I was already furniture in her story. Big day, Dad, she said. We'll get through this paperwork quick. Take all the time you need, I said, and I held the door open. Coffee's on. They walked into my kitchen and sat down at my table. The 3 of them, arranging their documents in a neat little row like place settings. What they didn't know was who else was coming to breakfast, and what was already sitting, signed and filed, underneath their whole morning. The trap wasn't set that morning. It had been set for days. Thursday was just the day they'd agreed to walk into it, in writing, with hearts. They got 4 minutes of coffee. I know because I watched the clock over my stove the way I used to watch a load test. At 9:74, Dr. Fisk uncapped his pen and slid the first form across my table. Mr. Grange, this is just a standard evaluation consent for your wife, and a few authorizations for you. The doorbell rang. That'll be for me, I said. And I let in Dorothy Van, and behind her Detective Sandra Okafor, and behind her Earl, who took up a spot by my refrigerator with his arms crossed like it was 1989 and somebody had touched my toolbox. You could watch the temperature of that kitchen change. Brooke's smile stayed up a full 3 seconds after her eyes had already left it. Dad, what is this? Mason said. This is Thursday, I said. Sit down, son. You scheduled it. The detective had actually arrived 20 minutes before they did. She'd been sitting at my table reading my green notebook, the transcript of a phone call I'd written down word for word, standing in my own mudroom in the rain. She read it twice. Then she asked me how long I'd known, and Mason's SUV pulled in, and I told her, 11 days. 11 days is all it took to take their 2 years apart. Dorothy went first, and she went floor by floor. Dr. Fisk, before you touch that pen again, Carol Grange was evaluated 6 days ago by a board-certified neuropsychologist and certified competent on video. Any competing letter you produce will be reviewed next to that video, your billing records, and your correspondence with a certain post office box. Fisk's folder closed. At 9:11 his gunmetal Audi backed out of my driveway, and no charges ever needed to chase him. Gone. Second, Dorothy said. The guardianship petition sitting with your filing service is moot. Carol's assets moved into a trust 6 days ago. There's nothing left for a guardian to control. Brooke's head turned toward Mason. The first crack. Dead on arrival. Third, Priya's report hit the table with a sound like a rail joint. Meridian Family Care Solutions. 26 months of transfers from Carol's inheritance. $31,400. Detective Okafor has the full accounting. Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult is a felony in Tennessee, the detective said, in the even voice of a woman who has said it many times. Mrs. Grange. Brooke, I'd advise you to get a lawyer before you say anything to me at all. Brooke found her voice, and it came out the flat one, the mudroom one. This is a family matter. This is insane. Mason, say something. Mason was staring at the affidavit Dorothy had laid down last, the one describing his father's confusion and memory lapses. He was reading his own signature line on it. "Dad," he said. "I didn't." She said it was just a backup. It would never get filed. "Fourth floor," I said quietly, and I nodded to the folder from Wesley Turk, commercial loan attorney. Mason. In March of 2019, Grange Home Lending got its startup money from a private note. $150,000. You told people it was an investor group out of Knoxville. I opened the folder. It was one investor. "Sit with the signature a second." He read it. I watched my son go pale from the collar up. "You?" he said. "The whole time? It was you?" "Blue Ridge Holdings, LLC, I said. "One member?" "Me." 41 years of railroad pension money I never spent, because your mother and I don't need much. I set it up quiet so you'd feel like you earned it. That note has a clause your lawyer should have flagged, a personal conduct provision. Fraud or moral turpitude by guarantor makes the balance callable in full. Wesley served the demand letter to your office at 9:00 morning. You have 30 days. Dad, that ends me. The leases, I know your numbers better than you do, son. Priya walked me through them. I looked at him for a long moment. You priced this house in February. Your mother was doing crosswords in ink in February. Nobody in my kitchen said anything for a while. Down the hall, I could hear Carol's television, low. Judge show. She likes the ones where the paperwork wins. Brooke made her last move, and I'll give her this. She stayed in character to the end. You're destroying your own family over money, she said. What kind of father does that? I stood up. I'm not a big man, but a kitchen you've owned for 38 years stands with you. You called my wife the asset with a heartbeat, I said. I inspected bridges for 41 years, honey. I know exactly what a load-bearing lie looks like, and you built your whole life on one. Consider it condemned. Then the consequences came, one at a time, over the following weeks, and I'll list them for you plainly because that's how they landed. Brooke was charged with financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult and theft over $10,000. She pled to restitution. Every dollar of the $31,400 plus 3 years probation and a court order barring her from any fiduciary role over an elder. Entered. Meridian Family Care Solutions, LLC, dissolved by the state. Gone. The guardianship petition and the affidavit about my confusion went to the district attorney as evidence of the scheme's scope. Withdrawn and weaponized against its authors. Her account with the 40,000 followers went dark in August, after a Chattanooga station ran 2 minutes on the case. The caregiver selfies aged very poorly. Dissolved. The image publicly, in the exact currency she traded in. Mason filed for divorce in September. That one I take no credit for, and no pleasure either. And the loan. Mason sold the second office, sold the Tahoe, and came to my porch on a cold evening in October to ask, not for forgiveness, for a payment plan. I gave him one, through Wesley, at arm's length in writing. Dad, he said at the bottom of my steps. Will you ever? Every door in my life is closed to you, I said. Until you become a man who doesn't need me to answer that question. Your mother gets to decide her own doors. Start there. Start with a letter. Handwritten. He writes her every week now. She's answered twice. That drawer opens on her schedule, not his and not mine. One loose end I never did tie off. I still don't know how Brooke got Dr. Fisk's name in the first place. Some things you leave under the bridge, Earl comes by every Sunday for pot roast now. Carol made it herself in March, 1 year, nearly to the day, after the stroke. Right hand steady enough to hold the knife, speech therapy, the sessions that were a waste anyway, gave her back about 90% of her words, and the one still missing, I hand her across the table, and she swats me when I get them wrong on purpose. Last Sunday she was doing the crossword in ink, and she looked up at me and said, clear as a bell, 7 letters. Patient. Starts with W. Walter, I said. No, she said, smiling. Weapon. Here's what I know at 63 that I didn't know at 30. The people who plan to take everything from you always study your assets. They never study your habits. So keep your habits boring, keep your notebook current, and keep your name on more things than you talk about. Because real justice doesn't come with shouting. It comes with paperwork, a good friend by the refrigerator, and a signature they never thought to check. If you enjoyed this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories. And as always, thank you for being a part of this community. I will see you on the next one.